Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking.
Hi guys! Cześć, tu Asia Domagała, Twój kompas w świecie nauki języka angielskiego. Ta audycja ma pomóc Ci w rozwoju Twojego angielskiego oraz umiejętności słuchania ze zrozumieniem. Przy okazji poznasz także ciekawe informacje nie tylko ze świata językowego. Odcinki przeznaczone są dla osób od poziomu B1 w górę i są w 100% po angielsku. Let's go! Welcome to episode number 4 of my English Compass podcast, and this time it's going to be something related to English itself. And the question or the topic of the podcast today is it worth studying English, or is it worth doing the English studies, English philology? And I'll try to answer the question, but probably the answer is yes and no, or it depends. Now, let me start by going back in time a little bit. Now, if I could go back in time myself, I think I would again decide to study English studies. The only choice that I would make differently, the only thing I would do differently would be studying something extra at the same time. Something like another language, perhaps, like, you can learn the language from scratch sometimes if you study it, like, I don't know, Thai or Vietnamese. I wouldn't like to study Vietnamese or Thai, but I'm just giving you an example. It's hard to learn. It's hard to know Vietnamese or Thai if you want to study it. Probably no one can do it, but definitely I would study something extra at the same time. Now, when I decided to study English, and I knew it from the start, to be honest, that English is the one. English is the winner for me, for my career, for my academic career, for my English, for my studies. I knew that the English studies in Poznań would be my top priority in terms of choice. Why? English studies at Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań, not a different university. Because, my hometown is Darłowo, which is, it's in the north of the country. It's just by the seaside. It's a stone's throw from Koszalin. So Poznań is not a natural choice. There is Gdańsk, Szczecin, Toruń on the way. Bydgoszcz is even closer, but not Poznań. Why Poznań then? Well, the choice was very simple for me, because AMU at the time, and still they do as well, have the best English studies in Poland. So I thought, okay, if I want to do something, let's do it the best I can. So I wanted to study there. At that time, when I applied, there were entrance exams, obligatory. So they took 200 people that had the best high school final exam results, and those 200 people were invited for an oral interview to Poznań. It was July. It was scorching hot. I still remember that shock. When you live your whole life by the seaside, you are used to at least mild breeze in summer. You're not used to 40 degrees in the shade in the middle of a concrete jungle, which the center of Poznań is. So I was completely shocked. It was scorching hot back then. It was a really, really hot summer. And I was also petrified, by the way, when I entered the building and I saw the people waiting on the corridor outside, waiting for their turn, because those people were browsing their notes. They had some books with them, notes, some papers, and they were still talking about the history of England, English literature, and everything related. Now, of course, I knew what could be the questions at this oral interview, that's at this entrance exam. It was, everything related to English-speaking countries, including history and culture. But I knew that it would not be an exam as such, so I did not revise any, dates or facts or, theories or anything. I really was a bundle of nerves because of those people. And, sometimes ignorance is bliss. I think thanks to that, I just was not as stressed as those people were, browsing their notes just 5 minutes before entering. I was a little bit concerned, but then when I entered the room, it was my turn for the oral interview, I was so still so petrified that I cannot remember much. I cannot remember the faces of the committee. There is a chance that, they taught me later on, that they were my teachers throughout the 5 years of studies, but I cannot remember that because I was so petrified. Luckily, I scored quite well. I got 16 points out of 20. 12 was the minimum threshold. So there was absolutely no fear. So out of the 200 people, they accepted 100. And that's how I started studying English. And it really was an excellent choice because I knew it from the start. I knew that this is for me, that I'm good at it and I want to explore it more. So who is it good for? I mean, who is English studies good for then? Well, 3 major things. Firstly, it's good for people who are passionate about English. And it's essential because you have subjects that are so much more than just English itself. I mean, so much more than just English vocabulary, English grammar, and so on, English speaking practice and etc. You have such subjects and courses like history of English literature, history of American literature, descriptive linguistics, history of English language. And Old English is like a totally different language. It has not much to do with current modern English. It's more like Latin than English, but we still had to study it. You have subjects related to knowledge about English-speaking countries, like, the legal systems, the political systems, and so on. There is also descriptive grammar, including syntax, which has nothing to do with the grammar you are familiar with. It's not like tenses or prepositions or articles. It's so much more. Until I actually learned what's descriptive grammar about and what syntax is about, I was, absolutely unaware of that as well. And syntax was, I think, the most difficult subject throughout the entire studies because it was so complex. Now, but thanks to syntax, at least I know that every single sentence in English has an explanation in theory. There is always a rule standing behind why this sentence looks like that and not a different way, why this word is in this position and not in a different position, and why meaning can change if you change the position of a single word. Syntax was a challenge, but then it was very useful to understand everything behind how language functions, English language. And, my studies in Poznan were very challenging also in terms of the time I had to devote to the actual studying. It was about burning the midnight oil quite often and having my nose in the books all the time. I learned much more on an everyday basis at my 2 first years at university than throughout my 3 years in high school. It was about everyday learning. Every week there were little exams, quizzes, and everything. If someone hadn't learned regularly, they wouldn't have been able to pass anything throughout the term, not to mention the exams at the end of the term or at the end of the year. So it was a challenge. If you are not passionate about English and everything related to it, if you're not ready to, embrace everything that's there, it simply will be too difficult for you. An advantage to, the difficulty of English studies is that there is a lot of language practice as well. So including phonetics in my case. I know that not many universities across Poland have phonetics in their curriculum, in their program. In my case, it was 4 hours of phonetics a week for 2 years. Can you imagine how much time that is? For 2 full years, 4 semesters, 4 hours a week. And it was really, really something extremely difficult because at the moment we entered the classroom on our first phonetics class, every person in this classroom, including myself, we thought that we can speak English. But then our phonetics teacher proved us otherwise immediately. Because of course we could speak, I'm laughing, but the accent, well, there was still a lot of room for improvement. And in my case, it was about studying every single sound separately. We had to study every vowel, every consonant, and all the other aspects of phonetics. And if we hadn't passed a single sound, we wouldn't have been able to move on. Not to mention that if someone doesn't master phonetics, and if someone doesn't master pronunciation well, there is no chance they would pass practical oral exam at the end of the first year. It's simply not possible. By the way, when it comes to phonetics and pronunciation, we could choose, and it was in the very beginning of the first term, whether we want to learn British pronunciation or American pronunciation. Well, myself, of course, chose the British one, but there were 50-50. There were 5 groups of British pronunciation and 5 groups of American pronunciation. So it was an even score. But anyhow, it was very, very helpful. I don't think it's possible to learn an accent, correct pronunciation in a different location. Of course, you can find online courses, which are sometimes also excellent. But then I already had it as a package deal in my English studies program. And of course, by the way, studying English philology also enhances language proficiency. Our English became better. We started with a level C1 on the first year. So then we moved on from C1 to C2, and it's simply, when it's about full proficiency, then it's really a lot. But of course, like studying English programs, studying English studies also fueled that. So it's not only about some, theoretical descriptive grammar and pronunciation, but it's also about the language itself. So there was also a lot of language practice too. So if you are passionate, then English studies is for you. Secondly, English studies is for people who know what they want to do in the future. So if they want to go to translation, research, literature, teaching, and so on, then absolutely yes, green light, totally. If you want to be a translator, then you have to study. If you do want to do research, you have to study and then do a PhD. By the way, there is a difference between translating and interpreting. I know that in Polish they are the same, tłumaczenie, but in English there is a difference. Of course, both activities, interpreting and translating, are about conversion of content from one language to another, but they differ in terms of methods and purpose. Now, translation involves simply rendering written text from one language into another, while of course preserving the meaning, the style, the tone as much as possible. And I would say the purpose of translation is simply to produce very accurate or simply accurate and readable written text, such as books, articles, legal contracts, manuals, or websites, or whatever there is. But interpreting, on the other hand, involves orally conveying spoken language from one language to another language in real time. That's the big difference. And of course, the primary purpose of interpreting is to facilitate communication between individuals or groups sometimes who speak different languages. And it's like you have interpreters present when there are some conversations, speeches, meetings, or conferences, and they help interactions flow smoothly and accurately. That's the difference. And of course, both translation and interpreting require linguistics expertise, and also, which is equally important, cultural competence and communication skills. Yeah, because it's equally important. So if you know what to do in your life, then definitely this is for you. Number 3, English studies is good for someone who is an academic type of a person. So someone who wants to do research, someone who wants to do a PhD. Now, probably my PhD story is a topic for another episode of a podcast. Maybe one day I will find the courage to do that. But my story of doctoral studies is not the happiest one, although there is a chance it will have a happy end. Like, I spent 5 years of doing doctoral studies at AMU, but then I, in a way, hit a brick wall in many different ways. I finished writing a PhD thesis, but I couldn't defend, and it was like really fighting a losing battle. At a certain point, I simply threw in the towel. I gave up, and I had to, I think, have a break. I somehow hit the rock bottom, but in the end, because my thesis was already written, a larger proportion of it was ready, I somehow tried to be resourceful again, courageous in a way, to find a different solution. I faced the music, and somehow, I rose from the ashes, and I decided to look for a supervisor outside of Poland. I found one in Ireland, which was natural because my thesis, my doctoral dissertation, is about Irish drama. Unfortunately, due to formal aspects, I couldn't do it in Ireland. And then I luckily found a supervisor in Spain. And currently, I'm on my 3rd year of doctoral studies at a Spanish university in Tarragona. My supervisor is currently reading because I finished writing. I should finish everything, so also introducing some changes after his comments until the end of August. And then from September, the whole process of reviewing should start. So there is a chance I'll defend this year or maybe in the beginning of next year. Please keep fingers crossed, because I even don't want to admit to you guys how many years it has already passed since I started my doctoral studies at AMU. Really, it's unbelievable. So I truly hope for a happy ending. There is a really good chance that I will defend. But if you also are an academic type of a person like I was, doing English studies is definitely for you. You cannot do it otherwise. Now, another question one should ask is, do you have to study English? Do you have to do English studies to teach English? And my answer is no. Of course, it's good to have a degree, because having a degree, you of course have the language background, you have certain knowledge already, but you also, if you studied to become an English teacher, you have all the methodological background that is very, very essential to teach. But there are also other ways to become a teacher of English, and that's through a number of different certificates and programs. One of them would be CELTA, which is Certificate in Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages, or TEFL, Teaching English as a Foreign Language. Now, both CELTA and TEFL are excellent. Now, if someone has a CELTA or a TEFL, I have no doubt that they are good teachers, because those courses, they concentrate only on the aspect of teaching the language. Of course, you need to have a certain level of advancement already in English, right? C1 probably. If you don't have C1, then you cannot teach. I mean, how can you? For me, it's a little bit paradox or impossible, I would say, to do that. I know that some people do, having a B2 level, they teach English, but then I think you don't have enough proficiency and experience in order to teach others. But it's just my personal opinion. But if someone has CELTA or TEFL or any other recognized and valuable certificate to teach English, I know that they have all the background they need, including English language teaching methodology classes, lesson planning, classroom management, language analysis, feedback, giving feedback, analyzing students' progress, and so on. There are different aspects of it. And I know that if someone passed CELTA or TEFL, they are ready-made teachers. In my team, by the way, at Angielski Kompas, we have teachers who have a degree in English language teaching, but we also have teachers who have CELTA or TEFL, and they are excellent teachers as well, because they have the practical knowledge and experience, which is sometimes very, very important. Now, another question, where can you work after English studies? And the answer is everywhere, or everywhere you want. Of course, education is an obvious choice because, English studies graduates, they often pursue careers in education as teachers, lecturers, professors at even colleges, not only schools, but also universities and so on. And they teach English as a second language, they teach literature and so on. That's a very obvious choice. But you can also work in publishing, which is a very wide area of expertise as well. Like you can pursue a career in publishing that involves such roles as, for example, editors, proofreaders, copywriters, content creators, literary agents. It can be a job related to writing, editing, even communication skills. It's also there. Not to mention writing and journalism, or for example, marketing, or any kind of public service and government service, right? Anything related to content creation, as I mentioned already, like copywriting, but even social media managers. Why not? If you have good language skills, good communication skills, why not? Of course, translation and interpreting, it's there. If you want to do either, then after studying English, it's waiting there for you. You can also do something which is in between translation and interpretation, which is audiovisual translation. I have a close friend of mine, Agnieszka, who we studied together. We have been friends since I can remember. And she studied with me, of course. We studied together for 5 years. And then she did an extra postgraduate program in audiovisual translation because it wasn't a natural part of our studies, of our program. It wasn't within the curriculum of our English studies program. She studied audiovisual translation, and at the moment she is a skilled manager at MTV, where she manages a team of people who, I'm not completely sure, but a team of people who manage, well, simply subtitles for programs, series, and everything that is aired on TV. So that's how it works. So there is also a job for you in entertainment. Why not? Like every single film and series needs subtitles. So that's also a job for translators, right? And the last but not least, well, you can also work as a, entrepreneur or simply a freelancer. Freelance teacher, freelance entrepreneur, and so on. Now, you can start your own business. You can offer different kinds of services. I know a lot of people that not only teach, but also combine it with writing, editing, or translating, or content creation. Like, you can combine it. Why not? So, as you can see, English studies is not for everyone, but it's definitely worth it if you are passionate, if you know what to do in life, and if you are an academic type of a person. If you want to study English because you think it will, help you achieve English proficiency, it can. But if you only care about proficiency, that English program, English studies is not for you, because English studies is so much more. And then it's probably pointless for you to study English literature, descriptive grammar, and the history of English language, right? So again, if I were to go back in time and make my decision again, probably I would still make the same decision. I would still, again, study English. Let me know, guys, if you feel the same. If you could go back in time, would you again make the same career/academic decision? Or perhaps you would decide something different? Please let me know, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I'll hope to see you in inverted commas again in the next episode. Cheers.
Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened and all carry-on baggage stowed until the aircraft is parked.